So good afternoon from Brooks River. My name is Mike Fitz, and I'm a park ranger here at Katmai National Park and Preserve.
And my name is Roy Wood. I'm the Chief of Interpretation for Katmai National Park and Preserve. For the next hour or so, what we're going to do is try to answer some of your questions about the bears of Brooks Camp and Brooks River area, but also today to try to celebrate the 97th anniversary of the creation of Katmai National Monument, which later became Katmai National Park. So it's kind of a special day for us. We don't get cake out here, of course, because we're standing on the wildlife viewing platforms, and you're not allowed to eat anything out here, but we'll probably have cake later, right?
If Ranger Gene makes us some cake, yes.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to have some cake then. For today's chat, if you'd like to ask us questions, we'll go ahead and get the questions rolling. We have some stuff to talk about first, but you can ask us questions by posting them on explore.org's website. If you go to that page at explore.org and scroll down below where the bear cam icons are and all the other webcam icons that Explorer offers, you'll see a chat window, and you can log in there, post your questions, and Ranger Gene will forward them to us today because we picked a chat time that was a little too late to get the usual assistance from explore.org. And I know we've gotten some questions already, but we wanted to, as I said, talk a little bit before we start answering the questions about the creation of Katmai and how this place came to be. You guys talked about it on the geology program that you did last month, correct?
Yeah, we. I think it was about a month ago today, maybe. I forget. It was Founders Day, the 24th of.
25th.
25th. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, about a month ago, Becca and I talked about that, and we talked a lot about the eruption of the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. Some of the early explorers that came into the area that discovered that and thought that it was worthy of a national park, and we went into a little bit of the story afterwards too, and how this place and its significance sort of changed over time, because it is very interesting right now that. When people think of Katmai, most people think of bears. Absolutely. Like, if we were to do a survey across the earth, one word that describes Katmai, it wouldn't be volcanoes. It probably would be bears.
Right. And in the original enabling legislation for the park, which was a monument, maybe we should talk about that. Monuments can be created by the stroke of the pen by the President of the United States. National parks take congressional action in order to create them. So this was created by Woodrow Wilson in 1918 as Katmai National Monument. And as he said, for the protection of the area around the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. And specifically, they were instructed not to include anything about bears in the early enabling legislation. They recognized bears were here, but for political reasons, they opted to leave that out of the enabling legislation. So it is really interesting that nearly 100 years later, the thing that we're most known for would be bears.
And people started to push, I think, for a larger national monument probably shortly after this one was established. And Robert F. Griggs, who we did talk quite extensively about in that chat about a month ago, he did want a larger monument that not only encompassed the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, but offered some protection for habitat for other wildlife. And in the 1920s, he continued to sort of lobby for an expansion of the national monument. And it was in 1931 that Herbert Hoover expanded the monument to include habitat like the Brooks River here. That was when this became part of the national monument for the protection of brown bears and moose.
Right. Yeah, so they saw early on the importance of saving all the parts and encompassing a larger area and protecting not only the volcanic area, but the spawning areas for salmon and the feeding areas for bears and the habitat that moose need. And I don't think they listed any other animals by name in there, right? But we would assume it would be wolverines and mink like we saw earlier, and every other animal here. Protect the whole ecosystem for posterity.
So it's I think today on the birthday of Katmai too, really it's a good day to reflect on how things have changed over time here. We certainly find that Katmai is still a magnificent volcanic landscape, but it's also a tremendous wildlife sanctuary at the same time. So it's a place, in my opinion, that a lot of places have brown bears, a lot of places have salmon, a lot of places have volcanoes, but the combination of these things, including the human history of the area too, we can never really forget that, because that's an integral part of the story. All of these things coming together, I think, really create a place that's unique on the face of the earth. We don't really quite have the same combination of features in the same way elsewhere. You're not Lake Clark has a lot of the same features, but it's not quite the same. They don't have as many bears, for instance. Their salmon runs are a little bit different. Their volcanism is a little bit different. They don't have quite the density of volcanoes that they have here, and their human history is a little bit different.
Right.
And I think when you go to each national park around the United States, each national park site, I mean, they're significant in their own way for those unique combination of features.
And this is a good year to be exploring all of your national parks, because we are in the centennial year for the National Park Service, and you'll be seeing a lot of print media and perhaps television media suggesting that you find your park, hashtag find your park. And this is an opportunity for you to reflect on why national parks are important to you, and perhaps share your love of national parks with people that maybe aren't as familiar with them as some of you are. And we will certainly see more activities in the coming months surrounding the centennial, and I'm not sure exactly what we'll be doing out here next year, but it's a big year for the National Park Service and a big year for national park lovers.
And we've tried to get a few people to, and especially Bear Cam fans, to share with us why they found Katmai, or how they found Katmai. I mean, we want everyone to go and find your own park. But there's a hashtag that we've been floating around called I Found Katmai. So you try to use that in conjunction with the Find Your Park hashtag when you're posting onto Facebook or posting onto Twitter. If you have art or poetry, or you just want to tell a little bit of a story about how Katmai is important to you, then definitely try to use those, and we'll periodically search for those on our social media feeds and try to share those with everybody, because I'm very curious to see how people find Katmai significant. I know why it means a lot to me, and I know you know why it means a lot to you, but of course it's just not important to rangers. It's got to be important to the American public too. Without the support of stewards around the country and around the world, then we wouldn't have national parks. So please share those stories with everybody. Let us know how you found Katmai.
How did you find Katmai?
I found Katmai, well, you're going to put me on the spot. I
am.
actually followed somebody up here, but I always wanted to come to Alaska. And when I came up here, this is definitely a place that I easily could see myself spending significant amounts of time in, because I like open landscapes. I feel a little claustrophobic in cities. So it was really fun for me to come up to a place, and I had spent some time in big parks before this, but coming up here, this is, Alaska and the Alaska Peninsula, it's sort of on a different scale than what I've experienced in the lower 48. I mean, we have, less than 5 miles of developed trail here?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, it's almost nothing. So it's really amazing that I can hike, and I took a week-long backpacking trip in the park, and I didn't see anybody the whole time that I was out there until the last day when I was coming out, and I was coming out on a really well-traveled route, so I expected to maybe see a couple of people there. But that's kind of how I came up here, and then I really found that it was a magnificent place because of the salmon resources, because of the bears. I'm also a volcano junkie. I love to explore volcanoes, so all of those things are really fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering, is there more to the story?
Right. Continue. And I always wanted to be a park ranger, and heard about this place reading a National Geographic book when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and set my eyes on this place. And but it was originally for the volcanoes, but now I hardly ever even go up to the valley overlook and look at anything. I would like being down here where the bears are. So, and also the wide open spaces and all of that too. So if you have ideas, if you have feelings like this towards Katmai or other national parks, this is a great time to share those with the world. What's our hashtag again?
It's I Found Katmai.
Okay, and are they posting any stories on Facebook, or are they tweeting?
They can, I think mostly a few people have been using it on Twitter,
Okay.
But you can also search for hashtags on Facebook too.
Yeah.
So if you're posting on Facebook and you put that in your post, then I can find it. You can also post directly on Katmai's Facebook page. There's a section for posting on this page. You can upload a photo, you can write some text in there. So if you want to just post directly to Katmai's page, you can do that as well. It's great when people create content, because that means that I don't have to think too hard about it.
And it's really heartfelt.
Yep.
It's really, it's really nice to hear from you guys. We get to hear from you a lot. A lot of national parks don't have the luxury that we have here. They don't have a partnership with Explore that allows this one-on-one communication, that we have, that we I won't say we take it for granted, but it's really nice to know that we can stand out here and have a real conversation with many people around the world. Pretty much any time we can tripod out here and it's not raining.
Yeah, it's been actually, I think this is unique for me, talking with a lot of people on a regular basis almost. Most other national parks I would, that I've worked in, I'd see people for a day. Maybe they come to your program.
Once.
Yeah, and they come to your program once, and maybe if they're around the next day, they'll come to another program. If you go to a park that is near some urban centers, sometimes families will come year after year after year, and you might get to know some families, but you get to see them just for a few days at a time. And It's really unique that I can converse with people on a weekly basis and sometimes on a daily basis through the bear cams here. So yeah, I have enjoyed that and found that it's nice to see that a lot of people have been paying attention to what we've been saying, and their knowledge of Katmai and bears has expanded greatly. And a lot of times you can answer the questions about these animals just as well as I can.
Yeah, I think we both have enjoyed that a lot, where we go trying to answer questions that we see, and you guys have already answered them for us. And then also being out here on the platforms, and I think the whole level of conversation we have with people is on a different level now because of the homework, the pre-visit homework that you guys do. You get very familiar with the bears, and when you finally make it here, people really know a lot about this place and the animals here, and that makes it, I think, really a great experience for us to keep building upon that, whether it's virtually with the cams or in person, that I never got at any other park. So very cool.
But we know that people are also very interested in what's going on along the river right now as far as bears, and there are bears around.
There are some. Well, one thing I think we should talk about before we actually start answering any of these questions was that bit of interaction that we saw when we first got here on the platform and we were setting it up.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
As we were just coming up here, we looked off toward the spit behind us, and you can kind of see I'm pointing in the right direction. I can't see, the lens shade covers my half of the screen. As we were coming up here, we saw an interaction between two bears out on the spit. I missed the beginning. You talked to Leslie about it. How did that begin?
Yeah, I think I missed it too, and I'm not sure if Leslie saw it.
She might have missed too because of the trees that are right here. But when I got up here and finally was able to wrap my brain around what was going on, what it appeared had happened was that lone spring cub was out on the spit and maybe had tried to approach Holly and her non-traditional family, and then 503 decided he wasn't going to have anything of that and was chasing the spring cub away. And we saw them make a couple of loops around on the spit with him chasing this lone spring cub, and then they disappeared off out of sight. Is that what Leslie was able to gather from that?
Yeah, I think that's what we were able to gather, but I don't. Unfortunately, I think we all kind of just glanced over and saw that bears were running.
Sort of mid,
yeah. We could tell which bears it was, but we didn't really see what happened. Maybe that cub was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's the really young bears like that. We talk about how they're faced with a tremendous amount of competition from other bears, even other cubs. Bigger cubs from different families want to push them out of the way. So it could have just been walking along the river looking for some dead fish, and it just happened to encounter that bear family. I think the encounter was not necessarily surprising, but it demonstrates that bears aren't nice to one another under most circumstances. Especially, you think about 435 Holly and how she adopted that cub last year, but that doesn't mean she's going around looking for every abandoned offspring or lost offspring and saying, yeah, come join me. It's just not energetically feasible for her to do that. And then the 2.5-year-old, the adopted one, he is feeling big. He's feeling confident. He has mom to back him up, so I think he's testing his boundaries,
right,
and pushing other bears around. He can take advantage of his place in the hierarchy, just like the big adult males do. And that he probably saw that little bear, saw that it was vulnerable, read its body language, saw that it didn't want anything to do with him, and he decided to maybe chase it. Maybe he was just playing around. Maybe he was having a little fun. But I think certainly that was an example of how he was asserting himself in a somewhat of a dominant manner over that young bear that's on its own.
Yeah, that was interesting to see. We got a bit of a chuckle out of it here when we saw what was going on, and I wish we could have seen more. I wish they hadn't disappeared. Shortly after they disappeared, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes later, a visitor walked out that way and looked around, I evidently didn't see anything, because when he came back by, we asked and didn't make any mention of it. So we can only assume that they continued on in that general direction away from us, maybe, you know, a short distance into the woods. Who knows? But we'll definitely keep an eye on that and see how that develops. And you guys can help us out on that too. If you see more interactions with them, you know, you can have make a note of the time and post the video clips like you've been doing. You may have missed what we were talking about and what we were trying to show you, but just a few minutes before we or a few seconds after I went behind the camera, I tried to show you a mink that had come up and joined us on the platform.
It was your zealousness, I think, that killed it.
Yeah, I may have nudged a cable or something and disconnected us ever so briefly, or it may have been a coincidence with something else going on. But sorry for that. But we are back now, we hope, and hopefully not sounding robotic. And what we were talking about is how voracious hunters that mink can be, and the types of critters they go for. Mike has posted a video of a mink encounter he witnessed. Was that 2 years ago or last year?
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
It's on the Katmai Flickr page. So if you'd like to see that, it's a short video of. Well, you can tell them.
Yeah, it's a short video I captured of a mink actually catching. I didn't see the catch. I saw the aftermath. I saw a mink dragging a rainbow trout out of the river right over here, and the trout was nearly as big as the mink. It was pretty large. So you have this mink dragging this rainbow trout by the corner of its head, and I don't even think it ate it. It seemed like it stashed it under the platform, because then it took off right after that. But I tried to slow the last few seconds of the video down so you can get a really good look at the mink with the fish kind of in its mouth as it's dragging it through the grass. So definitely voracious predators. They like habitat that we have right here along the Brooks River. It gives them forest where they can hunt small rodents in, but it also gives them aquatic habitat where they can hunt for fish.
I think you had mentioned during the time where we were cut off and didn't realize it, about how they are partially aquatic. They're not like otters. They don't spend a lot of time in there, but they are comfortable in and around the water, and that's why we see them here. And I think even a few years ago we saw one dragging a merganser underneath the bridge entry. So yeah, pretty voracious predators, and really fun to watch. Sorry I killed the feed on that, but if you've been following us on Periscope, you could go to a Periscope that Mike did also while we were setting up today, where he recorded that. And I don't know how long Periscope keeps them there, but it would be on explore.org's Periscope account, where you can go look for that. And that was pretty cool to see it. So amazing to see it again up here on the platform with us. When it showed up, we were talking about the play date that Holly and her cubs and that unrelated family had together, and we do have video of that we use in training to talk about it. It's an unusual thing. There were other aspects of that question that were asked. Let me get back to those. They were worried that Holly might have gone after the other cub, though she seemed really disinterested in it. And asked if we had seen this sort of thing before, and have play fights ever escalated into real battles.
Oh, I think they probably do. Just like when you're kind of wrestling with your brother or something like that, and you twist his arm a little bit too much, and he's like, "Hey, I don't like that." "Oh yeah, too bad." And then you just start shoving back one another. So I think that probably happens with bears as well. Most of the time, it's pretty good natured, but. Even with adult bears, every once in a while you'll see them sort of jawing with one another and wrestling and pushing each other off, and it seems like, where every once in a while one will just hit the other one just a little bit too hard, and that one takes exception to it. They never escalate into a full-fledged battle where they're really trying to injure one another like they would do if they're competing over a female or a fishing spot or something like that. I think they just kind of break off the encounter after that and say, "This sucks. I'm not participating in this anymore."
And we do sometimes see some rather serious injuries that come about. I mean, serious if that happened to us, that come about during these play fights. I mean, I've seen decent-sized wounds opened up on the neck of a bear or the side of a bear when they've been play fighting. Just the fact that happens when they're fighting and it doesn't seem to faze them, it always amazes me that they're amazing animals. There is a question about the spring cub, which perhaps is the one that we were seeing being chased around by 503 out there. They want to know if we know who it belongs to, and do we have any plans to intervene?
No and no. I think would be the short answer to it.
Yeah, we don't know who it is, and it's Park Service policy to not intervene in natural processes, and part of a natural process that occurs around here is the potential abandonment of cubs or the injury of a bear or a sickness that a bear may have, and the Park Service would not intervene unless that injury was caused by one of our actions, and we may not even be able to intervene in those cases. Sometimes it's just not feasible to do so, and we've had to address this a number of times over the last couple of years. We had last year 503 get abandoned by his mother 402, and he wandered around for a couple of weeks here, and we answered the same question a lot about why aren't we intervening. And what we always tried to remind people is that every one of these animals deserves a fighting chance to survive on their own. If we go intervene, there's really no way that we can intervene in a way that allows it to still have a chance at living its life in the wild. Yeah, because if we were to catch a bear, raise it, and get it to a point where it would be able to take care of itself, it would have imprinted on the human world too much. So it might be seeking out the company of humans, or might be attracted to these areas where we are because it smelled humans on the food that it was given while it was in this center where it was being rehabbed. So it could never be returned to the wild here, and typically is just not something that the Park Service does unless there is a man-caused injury involved. So while it's difficult to watch, if it happens again and we see this bear wandering around, that can be difficult to watch, but it doesn't always turn out poorly. I mean, 503 is an example of where, through his ingenuity and strength or cleverness, or maybe just dumb luck, he managed to survive this pretty precarious situation that he found himself in.
You mentioned just a little bit ago about how these animals are really, really tough.
Yeah.
So we've seen them persevere through very significant injuries, what looks like broken legs, broken jaws. I mean, they don't have a choice to do anything else. They have to get on with the business of survival. So a small cub is very vulnerable, and we're not going to tiptoe around anything. I mean, it faces a lot of odds, a lot of competition from other bears, from other wildlife. It doesn't know nearly as much about how to survive in the bear world as an adult bear does. So the odds are certainly against it, but we've seen bears overcome very great odds in the past. So here in Katmai, we're protecting sort of the phenomenon that we see. We're protecting habitat for large concentrations of brown bears, but we can't protect every bear from other bears. That's just kind of part of the bear world, and I think it is only fair that we give these bears a chance to survive on their own, and this population of bears an opportunity to evolve on their own without sort of us intervening.
Have we been able to identify the limping sow with the 3 cubs of the year?
Well, yeah, so Leslie, and if we've mentioned her at the beginning of the chat. If you're not familiar with who she is, she's Katmai's bear monitor, and she is specifically tasked with watching the bears here on the Brooks River, and during monitoring sessions identifying what bears are doing what, where they are, how often they're seen, how many offspring that they have. And I think she ended up identifying the one that's limping as a known bear. It's a bear that we saw last year on the cams, a female that had a limp the past 2 years, and she's number 451. She's not the only female around with 3 cubs, though. There's 132 that has 3 yearlings, and then there's several other bears with spring cubs as well. So we've been seeing a lot of family groups recently.
And we saw that other set of spring cubs yesterday. Do we have any idea who that was?
No, I don't think so. They were fat. They were fat. I mean,
but definitely not her cubs. Not 451. It wasn't that family, because the sow wasn't limping, and that was the other part of that question.
And that's a persistent limp that she's had for the past several years. So again, another example of how bears are tough. I'm sure whatever injury that she had was painful at the time. It doesn't seem like it healed properly, but she's raising 3 cubs. So again,
they were porkers.
Yeah, and they looked pretty fat and healthy. So she was doing her best and doing well.
There's a question about 747 and 856. We were seeing them regularly at the falls for a while, a couple of weeks ago, and now we're not really seeing them. Are we seeing them elsewhere around here? Or why do you think we're not seeing them?
I haven't seen 747 in a couple weeks, or at least a week. I don't know the last time that I saw him. So he was giant when I saw him, really, really fat. So maybe he's just wandered off somewhere else just to relax or to fish, whatever it happens to be. 856, I only saw him, I think, a couple of times. I suspect that some of these bears may know of other places to gain food at this time of the year, so maybe they're wandering to some of those other spots, but we just don't know.
There's a question about that too, about how is the water level and perhaps stronger currents causing some of the bears to look for fish elsewhere. We know that when the water gets deeper out here, it's harder for some bears to get the food if they're not as comfortable sticking their entire head underwater, and if they can't reach the bottom, there's going to be parts of this area that are not accessible to them because it is getting very, very deep out there. If we had the underwater cameras working, I think they would all be dog paddling when they went past it there. I don't think they would be able to really stand there. But you don't have to go very far upstream to get to the shallows again, so I don't know that that's really affecting it. It's just that probably that it was a really good run of salmon this year, that other places have, like you were saying, there's fish in other spots that maybe they're going there.
And the berries are ripening right now. We're seeing, I think, more scat around Brooks River, at least, that has berries in it. So the bears have started to graze on those too. And while a pound of berries doesn't equal a pound of salmon, I can also imagine that a bear probably wants to change a diet. Maybe some bears prefer a little more berries in their diet than other bears. Some bears probably are very tolerant of eating a lot of dead, rotten salmon. It seems like 410, she never leaves.
Right.
She's always down here. She's always eating a lot of dead salmon. But other bears, they may have
it's a secret to a long life.
Yeah, a slightly different palate. So yeah, she's found the fountain of youth, it seems like.
That's right. Let that be a lesson to us all. Rotting salmon, the key to a long life.
And if you maybe just discovered the bear cams this September and you're wondering, well, how do I get to know these bears a little bit more individually? We've been throwing around a lot of nicknames and a lot of numbers. You can download Katmai's Bear ID book. There's a link to it in the About section underneath the main video feed on explore.org. You can also just go directly to Katmai's website and find it in the ebook section there. And you can download that book and get to know a little bit more about these individual bears.
And while we're on a little break right now, it's about halfway into our hour-long chat, including our restart that we had to do. I want to take just a moment again to introduce ourselves. My name is Roy Wood, and I'm the Chief of Interpretation for Katmai National Park and Preserve.
And I am Mike Fitz. I'm a media ranger here at Katmai.
And we're here talking to you live from Brooks Camp in Katmai National Park, courtesy of the partnership that the National Park Service has with Explore.org, the people that run the cameras for us and make these live chats possible. And what we're trying to do is answer as many of your questions as we can get to. We still have a good number of them in the queue. I'm not sure how many we've gone through and how many we have to go yet, but there are quite a few to answer. If you yourself would like to ask us a question, what you need to do is go to Explorer's webpage. If you're watching it on Ustream or on the Park Service webpage, it's not really an option, but go to explore.org, go beneath where all of the webcam icons are, and you'll see a chat window. You can log in and post your question there. Ranger Jean is standing just off camera here, and she will review those questions and forward them over to us, and we'll be reading them off of the iPad here and trying to answer them. We can normally get to about 20. We maybe are at 5 so far.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
And so we'll try to pick up the pace a little bit, but we always like to give long answers to everything because I think so much of what we talk about really deserves a more in-depth.
Yeah, I mean, it's bear behavior oftentimes is very nuanced. The gathering of animals that we see here is very nuanced, and then we have things like minks show up. And we don't want to pass up those opportunities to talk about those creatures.
Let's see. So I answered that one. We were just talking about bear IDs. Have any new bears been ID'd in the last week or so?
Well, new bears are showing up, I think, almost on a daily basis. That doesn't mean that our bear monitor, Leslie, is seeing them in her session. So if a bear just walks by right now and I see it, that's not going to count towards our data because it's not seen in an official monitoring session. Because if we were just to count every bear that everyone's saw in the park, then our data set would be useless. We have to be very careful about how we're collecting that data, so it's repeatable, it's testable from year to year. So over the past week, well, we have 451, the limping female with 3 cubs. She showed up. I'm sure there's others.
Well, did we get an ID on the bear who gave that quite a show last week or early this week, putting its chin on the rock here at the bridge?
I asked Leslie about that bear, and she wasn't able to recognize it right away.
Okay.
So I think a lot of these bears, she's going to have to work through and go look at the photos from past years to try to match up these bears, and that may take her the rest of this monitoring season to do. And so we might not know until October or later. It just kind of depends on her workload, how much stuff that she has.
And so if it is a new bear, one that we've not seen here before, it would get a number. Do we know what the next number is? Do we?
I don't know if we know the next number, but it'll be in the 600s. It'll be
600s?
in that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so last year was in the 500s. This year will be in the 600s. And actually, if you wanted to know more about the bear monitoring program and how that works, I'll be interviewing Ranger Leslie next week. I think I had it preliminarily scheduled for Tuesday morning.
Is that scheduled on the Park Service website?
It's not scheduled yet. I just talked to her before the broadcast. She was just on the platform, so I went over and I asked her. So it's a tentative schedule, but Tuesday, maybe the 29th or so in the morning, I'll try to interview her right after she's done one of her monitoring sessions. So we'll actually have a data sheet that we can take a look at, ask her some really specific questions about how she does her work, and talk about what she's seen this summer and what she's learned about the animals.
That'll be great. Yeah. Last week, or was it the week before now, it kind of starts to run together after a while. We had a moose that wandered through the campground. Have we seen any other moose around here since it tore through the electric fence?
There was a moose when was that, Gene? That was, I don't know, it was a few days ago. There was a moose that was seen on the Lower River camera. Okay. And I know we saw some moose tracks on the road, or I did anyway, walking down it yesterday. So there's probably a few in the area, but not a whole lot of regular sightings. Certainly there's far more bears along the river than there are moose.
And far more moose this year than I think any other year that I've been here. And it's probably the same moose or 1 or 2 moose, but moose typically don't spend time in this area, probably because there's so many bears around. And it's not a very comfortable place to find yourself if you're a moose, especially a moose cow with calves in tow. Just devoid typically of moose. In fact, devoid of a lot of other animals, at least when the bears are here. I mean, we don't see that much other than, the bears and some smaller animals like, maybe the ermine and the mink and things like that until the bears start to thin out. Like wolves tend to make more of a show before the bears are here and after the bears leave. Have we seen any wolves in the last month or so?
I have not, but I know people have heard them howling from the campground within the past month. Okay. So there's still some around, and howling is a long distance communication tool that wolves have. So this is obviously a part of some PAC's territory, and it sounded like the people that I talked to, it sounded like the howling was coming from the slopes of Dumpling Mountain. Okay. But the mountainside, as you know, behind us is very thickly vegetated, so to find a wolf on those hillsides is going to be nearly impossible. Right. They're going to have to walk along the riverbank where we can see them pretty easily.
And we will see typically more wolves and foxes and other things as the bear numbers start to thin out at end of October and into November. So that's something to keep tuning in for if you want to see how this place progresses as the seasons pass. And we are very much starting to feel wintry here in the mornings, at least. We've had frost. We were all pretty cold up here when we were setting up because there's a little bit of a breeze.
That we have on right now.
You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers that I can see, and I'm betting there's another layer underneath there.
No, that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. So.
It was a little chilly. It definitely gets worse around here. I mean, in the wintertime, we can have temperatures that swing pretty wildly. It could be 35, 40 degrees and raining one day, and a couple of days later, it could be minus 30. But all over the place with a general trend to be pretty cold and hospitable. most years the lake out here freezes completely over, and the river will be mostly frozen with a few openings here or there, which is one reason why it's, you know, that bears don't stay in this area, even though there might be rotting fish well past that time. They just don't have the access to the river that they might have if it were always open. Like this was fed by warm springs. They might, you know, be able to stay a little bit longer. When they leave here, where are they going?
They're going to the surrounding mountains to den, probably. So we can't see them right now because the cloud ceiling is really low.
Yeah, especially over that direction.
Yeah. So within a dozen miles or so, there's many mountains, and the bears tend to choose denning sites up in elevation. So they'll
About
go up
how high?
about 1,300 feet or so. It seems to be average. Most dens in some of the past studies done were below 3,000 feet in elevation. They like to choose really well-vegetated slopes. They are not known in Katmai to use rock crevices or caves or anything like that. They tend to excavate a den into those steep hillsides each year.
And you explored a den a couple of years ago. What elevation was that at?
That was actually close to the summit of Dumpling Mountain, a few hundred feet below it, so about 2,000 feet in elevation.
And if you'd like to see that, you can go to the Parks Flickr page, and there's a short video of Mike exploring that bear's den. There might be some questions in here about the dens. I haven't scrolled through all of them, but we do get a lot of questions anytime we bring up hibernation in the dens about the size of the dens and the location of them. So we've talked about the location. How large was the one you went in?
Well, it was big enough for me when I was squatting down, and you'll see in the video, when I kind of squat down, I could easily crawl through it on all fours. I couldn't quite walk into it, but I did have to get down on all fours, but it was really easy for me to crawl through there. And it went back about 5 or 6 feet. There was a larger chamber back at the end. It seemed
Did you turn around inside?
Oh yeah, I could easily turn around inside.
Okay.
So yeah, I could squat down on my feet, and my head wasn't touching the ceiling, and I could look around quite comfortably in there. So, and in inclement weather, it would have been a great place to hide out for a little bit.
Any smell?
No, clean.
Just dirt?
Just earth.
Smell of dirt?
Just smelled like earth. So it was clean, didn't have, I didn't see any fur in there, just some roots and rocks. That was about it.
I don't know where this one might fit in other conversations, so we can just answer it. And how long is the bridge? About how long? Is it like 120 yards, I believe?
It's something like that.
It goes across the river diagonally, so the river is not 120 yards. I think the river's about like 90 yards across in this area, so it's just a little bit further since it cuts diagonally across there. Is that even in the shot?
I think the bridge is a little bit, the very end of it.
It's kind of, yeah.
Yep.
We can see a tiny viewfinder, and it's kind of hard to tell what we're seeing, but you guys know what the bridge looks like. So it's about 120 yards long. We do have a bear picking at it right now. What you see a lot this time of the year is bears cruising, of course, through all of these areas where fish are known to collect. We talked a lot about that during your play-by-play yesterday, that they go to the same spot over and over again. Individual bears will hit the same spot, and every bear will hit the same spot. So they all have kind of the same routine if they're familiar with this area. And one of the routines is what this bear is doing out there right now, which is to just cruise along the edge of the bridge and look for one of those rotting, like, what did you call them the other day? Like, you didn't say meat bags, but like a plastic bag filled with pate or something. They're really soft, and they just wrap around the struts on the bridge and get caught there. So the bears will cruise up and down like that one's doing, looking for a fish that's collected there. And when the bridge comes out, which will probably be maybe middle of next week, maybe the end of next week, when the bridge comes out, you'll see bears immediately come in and investigate all the fish that get shaken off of the bridge. They're definitely drawn to that activity.
And I think it's different. I mean, they're used to seeing the bridge in the water, and when it's taken apart and drug up on shore, it not only maybe smells interesting, but it looks very interesting too. So again, bears are very curious animals. We saw during one of my play-by-plays a couple mornings ago how 273 walked over to our little sign on the other side of the river and just peeled the paper off of it and started to chew on it. So anything that is interesting to a bear, they're going to investigate. And we can't put things outside here and not expect a bear to eventually play with it and damage it, just because they're big, strong animals.
And that one was funny, because how many times did you walk past that this summer and not pay any attention to it?
Oh, sure. I mean, she was
it just went straight for it.
Yep.
That was pretty interesting. So during earlier today, they saw 132 and the 3 yearlings for the first time. Yesterday, they saw the unID'd sow and her 3 kois. Do you expect to see new bears showing up
We
over
certainly
the next
do.
couple of
Yeah,
weeks?
yeah, and we yesterday morning we saw that one female with 2 spring cubs that walked by, and that was different than the female with 2 spring cubs that I saw in the evening. So at least yesterday I saw 2 new bear families that I had not seen before.
What are we up to now, number-wise, for bears?
Leslie thought there was about 20 that she's seen in session.
Okay.
I suspect, again, that there's a lot more in the area, but again, for her to count it, she has to see it in the session. So she had one that lasted from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, so she ended it just before this broadcast. And I was talking to her, and she said there was about 20 that she saw. But yeah, probably several more wandering through the area.
There's a question about hibernation, and we talked about it just a second ago briefly, but what sort of triggers the bears to go into hibernation around here? I mean, obviously temperature, probably availability of food. Anything else? Day length?
Yeah, day length. I think all of those things combined to drive them and their physiology to start to switch over. I think their physiology is sort of pre-programmed to switch over at the right time of the year. Day length may trigger that. Maybe there's some hormonal changes that get tripped by the shortening days. But certainly food availability is maybe one of the major influences that drives bears to start to hibernate. If there's a lot of food around, then maybe they'll stick around a little bit longer. It also depends on whether you're a female, depends on if you're a young subadult bear, depends on if you're a male, depends on if you're pregnant too, if you're a female bear.
There's another play fighting question. We've seen 32 Chunk playing with 879 this season. Is there a hierarchy for playmates? Where bears will only play with other bears with a similar dominance level?
Well, I think, if a bear, it's hard to say, but if, a bear that's not like a young cub would never play with a big adult male. They're
It would
going
be terrifying.
Yeah, they are afraid of those bears. They want to stay away from them. They know that those bears are competitors. Those are threats to their safety. So yeah, you probably do choose a playmate that's sort of within your class, I guess, in the hierarchy. So adult males maybe are more likely to play with other adult males. But we've seen males play with females too. That happens. But it seems like they tend to play with the same sex more than they happen to play with the opposite sex.
There's a personal question here. What's been your most memorable moment from this year?
From this year?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
From this bear year?
Yeah.
Not vacation.
Yeah. I have to think about that.
Well,
yeah.
I would say mine was seeing Holly and her non-traditional family reappear, because that's just such an unlikely thing to have ever happened in the first place, and then for her to be successful and come back with them again, that's something that I will take with me forever.
And I think that ranks up there pretty highly with me. I also just like to see, every year I just like to watch the phenomenon at Brooks Falls. I just like to go up there. I was up there, I think, almost every night in July, watching in the evening. So that's always really special to me. Seeing 854 Divot come back this year and looking as fat as she is.
That felt really good too.
That's pretty satisfying.
Yep.
You can read the backstory about how we removed the wire snare from her on Katmai's blog, and there's also a video posted on YouTube about that. So those sorts of things, when we see these animals coming back and we get to see their stories continue, that is very interesting to us. It's when a bear doesn't return, we're always sort of left with, I think, a question mark, like, this bear did this, and then we never saw it again. So when that happens, it's always like, it always feels a little unfinished to me. Like, I don't really know if it's dead. I don't know if it went to a new area.
And it almost always is unfinished with bears. I mean, it's extremely rare that we see a bear die and have that full closure to its life. I mean, One Toe and Tundra are about the only ones.
Yeah.
And other like random cubs that Lurch has dispatched. There's always that mystery at the end. There's that mystery of what they do every year when they go into their dens, which is one of the intriguing things about bears. We see one small part of their lives here at Brooks Camp, and the rest of their lives are almost a complete mystery to us because we don't follow them around. They're not radio collared, and even if we did, that wouldn't give us probably the knowledge of the individual bears that we're looking for, because we always want to know about that bear or that one, not as a species. But yeah, like really some cool things that we've seen this year and last year, and it's nice to have those storylines continue over to this year. I do wonder what happened to Divott's cub that was with her when we were doing the removal of the snare, and we'll never know unless we do DNA on it. And we are still hoping next year to commence a study on the DNA of the bears of Brooks River. Not sure exactly what form that will take at this point, but we have some people that will be doing that work for us. And as we get information from that, we hope to flesh out the family tree and share that with you guys, because I think you'll be really interested in knowing about the parentage as much as we are. Maybe some that we can't figure it out on, but at least it's a and this sort of leads into the science question here that we have next is, are these cameras and observations by so many people helping to advance the science and understanding of bears in any way? There's a follow-up, but I'll wait and ask that.
Well, we don't really have a formal system of, I guess, citizen science set up for the cameras. I think we would like to do that. So we need to definitely do some more thinking about that. The advantage is that there's thousands of eyes watching the river at any one point in time, and people see things that we don't see because we're not out as much as
and we can't afford the internet here to watch like you guys can with your unlimited fast internet.
So I think that is maybe how things are advanced here, at least, is that we get to fill in a little bit of these stories with the information that people are seeing on the cameras.
And certainly the snapping of photos that you do and posting them back in the chat area helps us when we come back after a weekend or come in the morning, and you guys have already been watching bears for 7 hours by the time we get to work. That really helps us to catch up, and then we have taken that information to Leslie and to others to say, hey, look at this interesting thing that happened. And cam viewers were instrumental in us documenting Holly's adoption last year, and Divot appeared with the wolf snare around her neck just right across the river from here at one point. So there's that informal, not quite anecdotal, because there's a timestamp on all these videos. We know when they occur, but that informal aspect of this that I think is helpful. And the fact that Explorer is recording all of this too. I mean, we have terabyte after terabyte of footage of every camera all the time, and they're trying to figure out a way to make that footage available to everybody and watch these videos and count how many fish the bears are catching, or how many times so and so steals a fish. I think all of that knowledge is potentially there in these cams, and people might start to use it.
Yeah, if we can somehow crowdsource this stuff, I think so there some people would figure out some really interesting stuff.
And then the follow-up was, is there any research being done using the public's observations? And I sort of covered that without asking the question. I know that there is a group of Park Service and USGS researchers that are interested in looking at the economic impact of the cams, and they're looking at it from the local economies. Are they being affected? Are more people coming to visit Katmai or interested in this area because of the cams? And also other aspects about the time you all spend watching the cams and the economics of that. And it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. And we've always been interested in the formation of this community that we have, because I think that's one of the coolest aspects of this. Not every cam has the devoted followers like we have here, where you guys know so much about these bears and so much about this place. And it's been really fun to be a part of that, watch that grow and turn into this just amazing community that we have here. And I know you've enjoyed that too.
Certainly.
So this one's specifically for you.
Great.
I actually skipped one.
I'm going to be put on the spot twice this chat.
Well, it's Ranger Mike or Explore.org. You have previously told us that males will do an exaggerated cowboy walk when they are interested in mating with a female. It seems that the male who was trailing Beadnose and 410 today was doing that cowboy walk. Do bears mate this late in the season?
Well, they don't mate this late in the season, and I watched the replay of that video, and I think it may look like he was cowboy walking, but he was just really fat. Okay. I think his thighs are kind of rubbing together, so he had to sort of exaggerate
involuntarily
his walk.
Cowboy walking.
Yeah, and because especially 409, who was walking in front of him, was kind of also doing that as well. They're just they're carrying so much weight on their bodies now that I think they just might exaggerate their steps a little bit to walk. But that was a very entertaining interaction to watch. I don't know why they all came together like that. I missed the beginning of it. Maybe one or more bears were just curious about the other. It seemed like they kind of didn't want to be necessarily very close to each other afterwards, or at least maybe the male wanted to follow the females. Maybe it was just out of curiosity. I don't know, playfulness. But it was interesting to watch, and it was a parade of big fat bears walking right down the road, right behind us.
I'll have to look that up later.
Yeah.
The question is, I know it's been mentioned that male bears tend to have a wider home range than female bears. Therefore, female cubs raised in the Brooks River area may be more likely to return to Brooks River when they are subadults than male cubs. Knowing this, but seeing that both of 503's moms have both spent their time at Brooks River, do you expect that 503 will come back to Brooks River when he's on his own next year? Or do you think he'll explore other territory?
It's quite possible that he would come back, but subadult males, they tend to disperse pretty widely, so he may go find some other place.
And it's also quite possible we won't recognize him when he comes back. Does he have any scars or anything that really easily distinguish him from every other long-legged, scruffy, thin subadult?
Not that I am aware of.
I haven't seen anything.
And his behavior is going to be different too.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be part of that family that ranks a little bit higher in the hierarchy. So maybe he's going to be testing his boundaries, but it's certainly not going to be to the extent that he's doing it now. So we'll see a behavioral change in him. He'll come back, of course, much thinner because he lost all his weight, if he does come back. So that's, again, another part of the story that we'll have to look for next summer. We can't really maybe answer that question too well right now.
It's a little bit after 5, so we will have to pick up the pace if we want to get through the other gazillion questions that have been posted here. They just keep appearing. After seeing 273 pull the paper down off the sign, even though that was a humorous moment, are we concerned that her cub might become a nuisance bear when he's an adult?
Well, bears have long memories. There certainly is evidence of bears here in the past getting play rewards as cubs, and then being more likely to investigate our objects in the future as an adult bear or a subadult bear.
And how fun was that?
To
tear that off? I think, was it really rewarding that she did that? Is that passed on? I don't know.
So there is that potential for sure, and that's why we're trying to remove the temptations from the bears. We're trying to make sure that we don't leave things laying unattended on the ground for bears to find and come to play with. We can't remove all temptations. It's just impossible. Unless we were to completely remove ourselves from this area, we wouldn't be able to do that. But yeah, there's certainly the possibility that it's going to continue or learn about those things and remember those things in the future.
There's a question about, is it possible to put some cam up facing a den site so that we could get them going into their dens? Unfortunately, we don't know where they're going to den. They dig a new den every year, so sticking a camera up facing a hillside, might take us years to actually capture something. And the logistical challenge, the technological challenge of finding a spot thousands of feet up the side of that hill when it's snowing and having a camera there and have it be powered and connect to the network, just not likely.
Plus there's the extra hurdle of wilderness designation.
Yep.
Almost all of Katmai is officially designated wilderness, which excludes a development, except in certain cases. And you have to, if you want to put a new installation in wilderness, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to do that, because we want to preserve the wilderness character.
We did capture 2 bears, was that last year, walking on the falls, walking on Dumpling? Was that last year or the year before?
It was last year, I think.
Okay, so they may have been headed to their den. I just got distracted because there's a bear sitting over here, just totally enjoying himself. Do I dare turning the camera around? Maybe let me answer these. I think we can get through the questions here. It's 5:06 right now. Of any of 402's cubs born in 2008, do you know if any of 402's cubs born in 2008 have made it to adulthood?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
no.
I'm not aware of any either. Let's see, there's the DNA question, and I can quickly answer that. When we do start it next year, it will probably be a combination of hair snares, where we have barbed wire hoops that will snag hair off of a bear, and that hair will be collected along with a photo of that bear so that we know which bear it was, at least based on our visual ID. And then biopsy darts that are large bore darts that will be shot into the rump of a bear from these viewing areas, and through the twitching action of the bear's skin, the dart sort of backs its way back out and takes a small plug of skin with it. That's the preferred way, because then you know for sure the bear you just shot. But once we get the details on that, we will definitely share them with you, because it'll be a really fascinating thing for you as well as us to be a part of that process. When Holly or any mother cub kicks her cubs out, or when she comes into estrus in the spring, does it happen in the den, or when does it happen?
It happens after they come out of the den, and it may happen within a couple weeks or so. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer after they come out of the den, but it happens after emergence in the springtime. I think one year we came back to camp in May, and we saw a mom and 3 really big cubs playing around with one another right near the lodge. And then next time we saw that mom, she didn't have cubs, and that was middle of May, so it may not happen until later at that time.
Water level keeps rising at the falls, and the reason for that is that it's been raining a lot, and the rivers around here dump into lakes like Lake Brooks, which then drains out to form Brooks River, and that's why the water level's been rising there, and that's why Backpack's rock has been mostly covered, or approaching the point where it's mostly covered right now. So I would expect that the water level is not going to keep increasing, because each day as it gets colder and colder, more of that rainfall or more of that precipitation falls as snow rather than rainfall, as the snow line creeps down the mountain. So at some point we're going to reach a point where it's all sequestered until next year, when the spring runoff occurs. It seems like all the spring cubs have survived this summer and done well. Is that unusual?
Well, that's the ones that we see.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily unusual. We can certainly expect spring cubs to get lost or die for a variety of reasons. But
and we have the one lone one around
yep.
here, so it didn't go well for everybody this year.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily unusual, but I think maybe it was just a coincidence this year that the bears we saw happen to have their full complement of litters right now. But we do have many new families walking into the area.
Have we ever been able to follow a certain cub from getting abandoned as a spring or yearling cub into adulthood? I can think of 2 right now that for sure we've been able to do. Tundra, who had a prominent scar over her eye, and we were able to follow her as from cubhood to adulthood until her death last year, and the same with Backpack.
Yep.
So there are some where we can do that. It's not typical, because they often lack a distinguishing characteristic that allows us to follow them. For many of us, subadults all look the same. They're kind of long-legged, scruffy, skinny. They all kind of look awkward and the same, and it takes a scar or a really distinctive hair color or something like that to help us follow them. Was the week-long rain last week normal for this time of the year? Well, this is a wet time of the year for us. That was a little, beyond necessary. There was a lot of rain in a short period of time.
So it's not uncommon. I think some years, some Septembers, we have some stretches of dry weather. September is one of the wettest months when you look at the weather history in king salmon historically. So not uncommon to have a lot of wet weather at this time of the year.
Is there any chance that more cams will be set up in different areas of Katmai? Well, as we talked about just a second ago, much of Katmai is designated wilderness, which precludes us from putting cams in there without a rather lengthy approval process to make sure that we are not degrading the quality of wilderness. So you might see, if somehow we manage to overcome bandwidth issues, you might see more cameras in this area running simultaneously, like the underwater cameras running at the same time. These cameras here at the lower river are running, and at the same time the riffles are running. But I don't know that we can really afford the bandwidth or the cost of the technology and the network and the power supplies to spread out much beyond this. We do have the camera in king salmon on the Naknek River that we use to watch waterfowl and whales in the spring, so that's something to look forward to this spring, as these cameras are typically down in the spring.
And to save power, we might actually have to turn like one of the lower river cameras off.
Yeah.
And if that happens, we'll probably have enough bandwidth to turn on the Naknek River Cam this fall. So we'll have to see how it goes, but that's a possibility. You can maybe see the river freeze over time. And that can be interesting to watch on a daily basis. Just a little bit more ice, a little bit colder each day, a little bit darker.
This person has been reading a book by the Craighead brothers about the research in Yellowstone. They mentioned that the dens were lined with pine boughs. I've heard no mention of that with Katmai bears. Well, we don't have pines.
Yeah, yeah. No, we do have spruce, but the bears don't typically den in habitat with spruce, so they probably aren't going to be using that. And the dens that I've explored, for whatever reason, they're pretty empty inside, except for the soil.
Yep.
So maybe that's I don't want to say like a thing that's associated with the bear culture. I don't think that's really the right term in Yellowstone, but that population, maybe that's something that's learned or ingrained within that population that's not here. I've talked to people who have explored black bear dens, and one person who I worked for a few years ago said that she saw a black bear den with a deer skin in it. It's like the bear pulled this skin in, and it was almost like it was a blanket inside of this inside of this den. So bears in different areas of North America will use things to line their dens occasionally, but it doesn't seem like that's happening here, at least from the dens that I've explored.
And the only time I've ever seen a bear like making a bed, other than digging a belly hole, if you want to call that a bed, was Beadnose up at the falls, dragging vegetation underneath the treehouse, this covered area that we have when it was raining one time, and then napping on it. So not something that we typically see around here, but fascinating nevertheless when you do. Two more questions to answer, and then we will be out of here. Next one is sound. Are we going to be turning the sound back on at the falls? Because we did mention that we might do that before. Right now, the issue we have up there, other than maybe some tweaking of the micro cables, is that if we turn it on, it involves more of a power drain. And I think this time of the year, we need to be very aware of the fact that we have a limited solar budget to work with. And lots of cloudy days. The days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and the intensity of the sun is not very much. That if we're not careful and we turn on too many things, like the infrared emitters, so we can watch at night, and or the sound, we might get to a point where the cameras won't turn on at all. So I think we'll probably opt for the cameras without the sound. Here at the lower river, once everybody is out of here in mid-October, we may be turning on a microphone that's directly underneath us here, and then you'll be able to hear some of the winter sounds that are around here. But that's just a real problem out here when everything is run off of solar in this area. There's no way to recharge it other than the sun.
And I think cam viewers will have to be prepared for limited viewing hours in the wintertime. We'll have to start to shrink stuff. Up on Dumpling Mountain, the Dumpling Mountain cam will have reduced hours. All these cameras down here will have reduced hours to save battery life.
And the last question we'll answer today is about donations. And is there a way to make a donation to the park? You certainly can. If you go to Katmai's webpage, and I've forgotten now what it's under on the left side. Is it support your park, or is it business?
It's under support your park. There's a link. You can find a link there to donations.
But there's a way there where you can, if you would like to donate to us, it's got the address of the superintendent, and you can send a check that way. One of the great things about this partnership with Explore.org is that they fund all of the expenses with the camera, and even give us generous donations on top of that. So they pay for the internet, they pay for all the equipment we use, they pay for the network back end, which is incredibly complex and no doubt incredibly expensive to allow all these people to stream it. So they're taking care of that. If you would like to make a donation to help out with other aspects of the park's educational mission or resource management mission, you can send that letter off to the superintendent of Katmai. The address is on our website, and we'll do our best to put that to really good use for you. Well, it is now 16 after. I think that probably accounts for our restart in there. Maybe ran a little long, and I got through every question that I think was on here. Thank you all very much for joining us today on the 97th birthday of Katmai National Park, or Katmai National Monument, as it was originally called. My name is Roy Wood. I'm the Chief of Interpretation.
And my name is Mike Fitz. I'm a Media Ranger here at Katmai.
And we will see you what day? Next week?
Probably Monday morning. You can join me for a play-by-play. I'll get that scheduled and online,
Great.
and then you can join me Tuesday for a tentatively scheduled interview with Ranger Leslie about
Great.
the bear monitoring program.
And you can look for those advertised on explore.org's webpage, usually one of the sticky posts above the chat window. We've also been trying to put them on Katmai National Park's website so you can see what we've got planned for the next few days beyond the very next one. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. Talk
Bye.
to you later.